aujourd'hui tenu à Paris une nouvelle réunion des chefs d'État et de gouvernement des 35 pays qui composent la coalition des volontaires, aux côtés du président Zelenskyy et en présence d'une délégation américaine conduite par messieurs Witkoff et Kushner. C'est la 15e réunion.
This is the 15th meeting of the coalition of the willing that we've had since the 17th of February of last year. We have with us 28 heads of state and government, the Secretary General of NATO, and the President of the European Commission, and the President of the European Council. But today, we've made considerable progress, as reflected in the Paris Declaration, providing strong guarantees for lasting peace. This declaration of the Coalition of the Willing, for the first time, recognizes operational convergence between the 35 countries making up the Coalition of the Willing, Ukraine and the United States of America. We're talking about strong security guarantees. This declaration sets out each of the components of this security guarantee. We have a report from our heads of general staff and also from the side of the Euro-American coordination. And here we have taken due note of the fact that there is a coordination body that will fully coordinate all the competent armed forces and provide coordination between, firstly, with the setting up ceasefire monitoring mechanisms to be placed under American leadership, with contributions from several states that said they were willing and able to do so. Then long-term support, firstly to Ukrainian armed forces that are and will remain in the front line of defense and deterrence against aggression. So we will have on a volunteer basis 800,000 men with training capabilities and all the necessary resources to ensure that this army can deter any new aggression. Then we'll continue to lay the ground for the creation of a multinational force in the air, on the seas and on land to provide reassurance after the ceasefire and a long way behind the contact line that was agreed between all the general staff from France to Germany and Poland. I would also like to salute the work done and offered by Turkey in maritime theft. They are willing to take on responsibilities. And fourthly, we have decided to translate into legal terms these commitments to support Ukraine in the event of a new attack by Russia through solidarity and intervention mechanisms. And also, we are continuing to converge around the questions of economic support and corruption. That's the second thing we talked about. But at the same time, we have consolidated the architecture, the planning, the means and the rules for the security guarantee for Ukraine the day after peace is signed, both for Ukraine and the continent of Europe. Part of our discussion was then focusing on Ukraine's future prosperity with the American plan that was presented and the European contributions with a desire to speed up our work alongside Ukraine so that in the next few weeks this prosperity plan can be finalized. It will be a major component of the peace agreements. All of this constitute essential pillars of what will support the negotiations that are underway. And we want, therefore, that to be completed as soon as possible. But these security guarantees are the key to ensuring that never a peace agreement can mean Ukrainian surrender, and never a peace agreement can mean a new threat for Ukraine. And I think what's very important to underscore is all the countries represented here, but also all the countries in the coalition of the willing, and those who attended this meeting following the excellent coordination that we had last year in Berlin. All those actors share the same desire for peace in Ukraine and Europe, but we insist that this be a fair, lasting and strong peace. And we're all clear in our minds that the peace agreements signed by Russia in the last 15 years have all been broken in Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine. Therefore, based on that experience, we want to have peace and guarantees of peace on the basis of Europe's experience of the last 15 years. This is why the Paris Declaration includes these guarantees and notes the convergence between Coalition of the Willing, Ukraine, and the United States of America. In addition to all this, in the short term, we will continue to provide our support to Ukraine to cope with all the challenges it is facing at the moment in terms of protecting its airspace, protecting civilians who are continually targeted, even as we speak, by the Russians. And we will also continue our work on sanctions to limit and reduce Russia's war effort. So that is what I have to report, thanking my colleagues in Europe and the United States for the progress that has been possible thanks to today's meeting. I'll now hand over to President Zelenskyy.
Thank you, dear Emmanuel, for your invitation. I would like to thank Chancellor, Prime Minister, as well as the American representatives and all the journalists present. First of all, I would like to thank you for this meeting, which is the most representative. 27 leaders of the European Union, NATO, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey. As a matter of fact, it is a very broad representation, and we are able to sign a document. This is very concrete. There is a declaration, a joint declaration, and there's also this declaration of intent signed by all three countries. And this illustrates the willingness of the coalition and the European countries to work for peace. And we want to be ready so that when diplomacy reaches peace, we can place the forces of the coalition of the willing. The details will be set out in other documents. We're working on which countries are willing to contribute and guarantee security in the air, at sea, and on land. We are assessing which forces are necessary, who will be able to, who shall coordinate all of that. And we also want to work on monitoring and clearly say how this force or that force will be financed, as well as the Ukrainian army. I believe that our Ukrainian forces will be based on the Ukrainian army with other elements. The military from France, the United Kingdom, and others have worked on the necessary military equipment. We also have, we already have enough details, and we know which countries will get involved and what each of them will contribute separately. And allow me to thank every leader who is willing to contribute to this peaceful solution. We also addressed, we had very concrete discussions with the American delegation regarding the monitoring of peace. It's very important for us. What is crucial in this peace deal is anything that can prevent a new Russian aggression. We also made progress with the American representatives who worked on documents in Paris, and we will have other meetings with Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner. We are working on some bilateral agreements, bilateral documents, as well as trilateral documents, and are hoping to sign these soon in different formats. And God willing, we will succeed. We are very grateful for the support of the United States of America, and so that they can provide the necessary support so that Russia cannot aggress Ukraine once again. And we very much agree upon the fact that the guarantees must be based on some legal grounds to be confirmed by the American Congress. Of course, some issues remain open regarding these documents, including the 20-point document. And what we really need to work upon is the issue of territory. We have a number of ideas that could be helpful. And if some issues are not remain blocked between our teams, and the leaders can also get involved. There will be other discussions, and I would like to thank you, Emmanuel, for giving this opportunity, allowing our teams to be able to continue working here for 2 days. And I'd like to thank the American representatives for contributing to it. When it comes to security, the architecture already exists, and our partners can pressure Russia to put an end to this war. Ukraine never stood and never prevented peace. Russia started this aggression, and it is very clear as to who should do what is necessary to be done to put an end to this war. So I would like to thank all of those who contribute to peace. We all understand that we need to stop the aggressor to allow peace. The deep strikes, the sanctions, our diplomacy, all of this is working. Today we also talked about our air defense. It is essential. Some leaders of the coalition of the willing mentioned it. For us, it is a daily issue. It is true that Ukraine needs missiles every day because, notwithstanding diplomacy, the Russian strikes continue. Russia is not concentrating on diplomacy. They are striking our villages or cities or infrastructure. And we discussed this issue with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and I would like to thank him deeply for his understanding and his support. In Paris, the extension of air defense has been discussed already again. The stronger our air defense, the stronger will be our diplomacy. So thank you to all of you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Ladies and gentlemen, this new year is beginning exactly the way the old one ended. That's to say, with intensive peace diplomacy for Ukraine.
Und auf dem Weg hin zum Frieden geht das heutige Treffen der Koalition der Willigen einen weiteren Schritt. Ich will mich zunächst herzlich bedanken bei Emmanuel Macron für die Gastfreundschaft in Paris, aber auch bei beiden, bei Emmanuel Macron und Keir Starmer für die Vorbereitung dieses Treffens heute zusammen mit Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Denn, meine Damen und Herren, wir sind heute in dem Dreieck der Ukrainer, der Europäer und der Amerikaner vorangekommen. Ein Treffen, das wir in dieser Zusammensetzung in Berlin im Dezember zusammengebracht haben. Das ist ein gemeinsamer Erfolg. Und dafür möchte ich auch sehr herzlich den Vertretern der amerikanischen Regierung, Steve Witkoff und Kushner, herzlich danken. Auch Präsident Trump für seine Bemühungen und seine Unterstützung. Denn wir teilen alle zusammen dasselbe strategische Ziel. Wir wollen erstens und vor allem, dass so schnell wie möglich die Waffen in der Ukraine nach 4 Jahren des Krieges endlich schweigen. Das Land steht am Rande einer humanitären Energiekrise. Und deswegen intensivieren wir ohnehin unsere starken Bemühungen, jetzt noch einmal zu einem schnellen Ergebnis zu kommen. Wir wollen, dass ein Waffenstillstand zweitens, anders als im Abkommen von Minsk im Jahre 2015, auf starke Sicherheitsgarantien gestützt werden kann. Und wir wollen schließlich drittens als Europäer und Ukrainer diesen Waffenstillstand gemeinsam gestalten. Heute stand im Zentrum, welchen Beitrag
Today we focused on the contribution that Europe and its partners after a ceasefire could make for Ukraine. As coalition of the willing, we will be shouldering our responsibilities. We want to help to make sure that in the future there are strong armed forces in Ukraine that constitute a credible deterrent for Russia through arming, training and funding. We will
Waffenstillstands beteiligen und wir werden auf Land, zur See und in der Luft zur Stärkung der Ukraine beitragen. Wir sind uns mit unseren Partnern in Washington einig, dass dafür Bedingungen erfüllt sein müssen. Es braucht erstens starke rechtlich bindende Sicherheitsgarantien von uns allen, auch der USA, und einen starken amerikanischen Backstop zur Absicherung des europäischen Engagements. Ich bin sehr dankbar, dass die USA nicht erst seit heute dazu bereit sind. Der Waffenstillstand muss zweitens mit der russischen Seite so gestaltet sein, dass die Koalition der Willigen auch tätig werden kann. Wir arbeiten genau auf dieses Ziel hin. Und schließlich drittens muss selbstverständlich jeder Partner der Koalition nach seinen innerstaatlichen Verfahren zu gegebener Zeit beschließen, welchen Beitrag er leistet.
To decide what contribution they will make.
Politisch, finanziell und
Germany will continue to support it politically, financially and militarily. That could mean, for example, that after a ceasefire for the Ukraine in a
Ich will hier an dieser Stelle sagen, über Art und Umfang eines deutschen Beitrages müssen und werden Bundesregierung und Deutscher Bundestag entscheiden, sobald die genannten Bedingungen geklärt sind. Ich will für mich sagen und auch für die Bundesregierung, wir schließen dabei grundsätzlich nichts aus. Deutschland ist schon heute im 4. Jahr des Krieges stärkster Unterstützer der Ukraine.
Kiev's strongest supporter, and after a
ceasefire,
Germany will accept responsibility for the security of Ukraine and for the continent as a whole. We also discussed today how after a ceasefire we could promote the reconstruction of Ukraine. We are working on a package for that among European partners in close coordination with the
Details dargelegt, wie die Kommission an einem solchen Paket arbeitet. Denn der Wiederaufbau ist untrennbar verbunden mit den Sicherheitsgarantien, wirtschaftliche Stärke wird ein unverzichtbarer Garant dafür sein, dass die Ukraine Russland auch in Zukunft glaubwürdig abschreckt. Lieber Volodymyr, ich will es offen sagen, hieraus ergeben sich auch Erwartungen an die Ukraine. Dazu gehört, und das weißt du,
this also means certain expectations
gesprochen, die Ukraine muss sicherstellen, dass sich ihre jungen Männer dann auch
Ukraine must make
in den Dienst
sure
einer
that its
sicheren und
young
wirtschaftlich gesunden Ukraine
men
stellen, statt nach Deutschland, nach Polen, nach
find
Frankreich
decent jobs in their own country
auszureisen,
rather
so wie wir
than
es
traveling to Germany, Poland
erleben.
or
Das ist ein
France.
Thema, das wir beide
This is something
in Brüssel auch
that
schon
we have already
erörtert
discussed
haben.
in Brussels
Ich
together,
denke, das ist
and
eine
I
Erwartung,
think
die
that
auch
this
die
is an
Ukraine
expectation
erfüllen kann und
that Ukraine
Meine Damen und
can
Herren, wir können
meet
heute
and
nicht
will
sagen,
meet. So,
ob wir
ladies and
die Waffen in
gentlemen,
der Ukraine
no one can say
in
today
6 Wochen
whether
oder in 6
the
Monaten zum Schweigen
arms
bringen,
will be
aber
silenced in Ukraine
für
in
diesen
6
Frieden
weeks or in
arbeiten
6
wir
months, but
unermüdlich.
we are
Wir werden
working
dabei sicherlich auch Kompromisse
tirelessly
machen müssen.
towards that
Wir
peace.
werden
We'll
dem
obviously have
Ideal
to make
eines gerechten
compromises.
Friedens
We
nur
will
nahe kommen,
probably
so wie wir uns das
not
vorstellen.
be able to
Aus heutiger
achieve the
Sicht, wir
ideal
werden
of
keine
a
Lösungen aus dem
perfectly
diplomatischen Lehrbuch schaffen,
designed peace,
aber unter den
not as much as we
gegebenen
would like,
geopolitischen Umständen
but we have
erfordert
to
es
learn
große
not
Anstrengungen
from
von uns auch in den nächsten
books,
Tagen,
but
Wochen,
from the existing
vielleicht
geopolitical
Monaten. Wir werden das mit Hartnäckigkeit,
circumstances
mit Realismus
going for the
und
next 3
mit
months. We will
Weitblick
go about this
das
with
Beste versuchen
perseverance,
zu erreichen,
realism,
nämlich einen
and a
stabilen
clear
Waffenstillstand,
view of what is
starke
best for Europe, as to say a
Sicherheitsgarantien und
stable
einen Frieden in Europa,
ceasefire, strong
der
security
Ukraine
guarantees,
und
and peace
Europäer
in
miteinander eng
Europe,
verbindet und den wir auch
linking
gemeinsam
Ukrainians and
gestalten. Noch
Europeans
einmal
that
Dank
we
für das
form
gute
together. So
Treffen
once
heute.
again, thank
Es
you
hat sich
for this
gelohnt,
excellent
dass wir
meeting
in so
today.
großer Zahl,
It really
übrigens
was
nie
worth
zuvor
coming
in
together
Präsenz,
in such great
in jeder
numbers. Never
Koalition der
happened
Willigen,
before
nie
in the
zuvor in Präsenz, in
coalition
so
of the
großer
willing.
Zahl,
We've never had
seit wir
so
hier in
many
Paris
people
zusammen gewesen
in
sind.
one room as we
Und
had
das gibt
today in
das
Paris.
klare Zeichen an
And that
Russland,
shows clearly
stoppt
to
diesen
Russia
Krieg.
that they have to
Es macht
stop
keinen
the
Sinn, ihn
war.
fortzusetzen.
There's no
Wir
point
sind bereit,
continuing
als
it.
Koalition
And
der
as
Willigen
coalition of the
mit der
willing,
Ukraine,
we
mit
are
den
willing to
USA
work
zusammen
with
einen Weg
Ukraine and
aufzuzeigen,
the
wie
US
endlich Frieden
to
herrschen
find a
kann in
way
Europa
through
und
to
in diesem Fall
permanent or
ganz
stable
besonders
peace in Europe. So all the best for Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Monsieur l'envoyé spécial, Steve Witkoff, Monsieur Jared Kushner.
Hello. So, my name is Steve Witkoff. Hello, everybody. President Macron, I want to thank you for your hospitality. You're an incredible man, and thank God for you. And President Zelenskyy, I want to thank you for your commitment to the peace here, your team. You have an outstanding team, and it's our privilege to work on this endeavor. I want to be clear that Jared and I have been working with Ambassador Kushner for close to 10 hours today. And we'll be meeting with the Ukrainian delegation this evening, continuing that work. Because President Trump's mandate is that he wants a peace in Ukraine. And we are determined on his behalf to do everything possible to attain that peace. A lot of progress began first in Geneva. We made tremendous progress there. We moved on to Berlin. Lots of progress happened there. And as President Zelenskyy identified, we had a very compelling meeting in Mar-a-Lago. And we look forward to more progress as a result of everything that's occurred today. We think we're largely finished with security protocols, which are important so that the people of Ukraine know that when this ends, it ends forever. But we also think, critically, that we are very, very close to finishing up as robust a prosperity agreement as any country has ever seen coming out of conflicts like this. It will aspirationally mean large, large possibilities for the Ukrainian people, for people coming home from war who will find wonderful jobs out there. We're working with BlackRock, Larry Fink in this endeavor, and we think it's going to be very, very important for the people of Ukraine. And we believe that a robust economy correlates and works directly with these security protocols. It makes Ukraine a strong, independent nation, and we think that's really important in terms of the long-term future. Jared and I are prepared to do anything necessary to work with our European colleagues. Prime Minister Starmer, you've been incredible, as has Chancellor Merz, and all of the European nations who we met today, who we spoke with. It's all been an important meeting today, and we think we've made a lot of progress. We heard President Zelenskyy and some of the other people here talking about land options. That will be the most critical issue, and we're going to be continuing on with those discussions, and hopefully we'll be able to meet or come up with certain compromises with regard to that. But I do want to say this. We are here to mediate and help in the peace process, and we're prepared to do anything necessary to get to that place. President Trump strongly, fervently believes that this killing has to stop, that the carnage has to stop. And we're determined, all of us up here, to be a part of that.
Nothing to add. That was perfectly said.
Okay. Thank you.
Nous allons passer aux questions.
Questions. We'll take questions now.
Yeah. One question by delegation. Je vous en prie.
Go ahead.
C'est bon? Bonsoir.
Good evening, Claire Gatinois from Le Monde.
Bonsoir, messieurs les présidents, chefs d'État, chefs de gouvernement. Bonsoir, messieurs les envoyés spéciaux. Monsieur le Président Emmanuel Macron, c'est la 15e fois que vous avez dit tout à l'heure que la coalition des volontaires se réunit pour bâtir des garanties de sécurité pour l'Ukraine en espérant le soutien des États-Unis. Trump ne s'est pas encore engagé fermement sur ce soutien américain. Après l'opération au Venezuela et les menaces portées sur la souveraineté du Groenland, les Européens peuvent-ils encore faire confiance à l'allié américain? Les volontaires ne doivent-ils pas penser les garanties de sécurité sans les États-Unis? Vis-à-vis du Groenland, au-delà des déclarations qui ont été publiées ce matin, faut-il envisager un déploiement de troupes européennes pour protéger le territoire? Enfin, est-ce pour préserver ce lien avec les États-Unis que vous n'avez pas condamné l'intervention militaire américaine au Venezuela?
Thank you. That multiple question.
D'abord,
and
sur la question du
I wish you a happy new year. On the question of Venezuela, which I think is not really connected with today's matters.
Diplomatie française s'est exprimée par les canaux qui conviennent.
Roots and ways. French diplomacy has already expressed itself. We have to see that as a coherent message. I think I've been very clear about that. Regarding today's matters,
la présence aujourd'hui des envoyés spéciaux du président Trump, les engagements du président Trump lui-même, en particulier ce qu'il a pu dire lors du rendez-vous qui s'est tenu à Mar-a-Lago en fin d'année dernière avec le président Zelenskyy, disent au contraire l'engagement des États-Unis d'Amérique pour bâtir la paix et prendre leurs responsabilités. Cette coalition des volontaires marque une étape nouvelle qui me semble correspondre à ce que nous défendons et qui, d'ailleurs, est conforme aux souhaits américains. Ce que la France défend depuis plusieurs années, c'est une Europe plus indépendante et c'est une plus grande autonomie stratégique. C'est-à-dire une Europe qui s'occupe de sa sécurité, davantage, en respectant le cadre otanien, mais qui prend davantage sa part. Ce que le président Trump a constamment dit, dans son premier mandat comme dans celui-ci, c'est que les Européens doivent prendre plus de la part du fardeau. C'est ce qu'il nous demande de faire. C'est cohérent. Et donc, tout le travail qui a été fait ces derniers mois, à travers la coalition des volontaires, c'est d'avoir les Européens, mais je veux aussi souligner la présence dans la coalition des volontaires du Canada, de la Nouvelle-Zélande, de l'Australie, de plusieurs autres pays, du Japon, en particulier le Premier ministre canadien était avec nous aujourd'hui, ce qui est un signal très fort, et est engagé dans ces garanties de sécurité. Donc cette coalition des volontaires, elle est, si je puis dire, le cœur battant de ce soutien à l'Ukraine pour les garanties de sécurité. Elle dit le jour d'après la paix, voilà comment nous nous mettons en situation d'apporter à l'Ukraine ces différentes composantes, et en particulier un format d'armée ukrainienne qui dissuadera toute nouvelle agression, des forces multinationales de réassurance et des règles d'engagement. Dans ce contexte-là, le soutien et la participation américaine sont très importants pour beaucoup de pays. Elles sont très importantes pour beaucoup de pays qui sont membres de l'OTAN. Elles sont très importantes parce que les capacités américaines, parfois une exclusivité sur certaines composantes de ces garanties de sécurité qui les rendent clés. Ces dernières semaines ont marqué un changement, puisqu'il y a eu un engagement américain, ça a été dit par le chancelier Merz, notre rendez-vous à Berlin a permis d'acter déjà une étape et un mouvement. Ensuite, SACEUR, et donc le général américain en charge des forces justement américaines en Europe, mais également les coordonnants au titre de la participation américaine dans l'OTAN étaient présents avec nous et a participé à la planification. Et donc il y a aujourd'hui ces différentes couches de garantie de sécurité où les États-Unis d'Amérique ont clarifié leur participation, et en particulier sur ce qu'on appelle le monitoring, c'est-à-dire la surveillance de la ligne de front. Les capacités d'observation et de suivi américaines sont absolument déterminantes et ont été confirmées. Donc tout ça pour vous dire que ces derniers mois, nous avons élaboré un ensemble, il est cohérent, il est solide. Les États-Unis d'Amérique nous ont demandé de faire plus, nous le faisons et c'est légitime et nous le voulons. Nous avons pour la première fois une coalition des volontaires qui porte de telles garanties, mais nous avons aussi une participation américaine par les moyens qu'elle apporte et ce fameux backstop, c'est-à-dire ces garanties. Dans ce contexte-là, à la fois les déclarations du président Trump à Mar-a-Lago avec le président Zelenskyy en fin d'année dernière, ce qui a été réaffirmé par les généraux compétents dans la chaîne de commandement américaine, et ce qui a été porté toute aujourd'hui par messieurs Witkoff et Kushner, est cohérent, c'est un engagement américain pour la paix. Je les en remercie. Et donc, je n'ai pas lieu de suivre quelques thèses qui douteraient de cet engagement, compte tenu de leur présence, des mots très forts qu'ils ont eu aujourd'hui, et du travail qui a été mené avec les États-Unis d'Amérique pour conduire ce dispositif. J'ajoute que les États-Unis d'Amérique, en tant que signataires de la Charte des Nations Unies et membres de l'OTAN, sont aussi des alliés des Européens. Et donc, c'est en tant que tels qu'ils sont présents aujourd'hui et qu'ils ont travaillé à nos côtés durant ces dernières semaines. Merci beaucoup.
Hello to everyone. Oksana Tkachenko, Ukrainian channel 1+1. I have a few questions. First one for Ukrainian President. Пане президенте, чи можете ви сказати, що ці гарантії безпеки дійсно вже готові до реалізації, фіналізовані? І як ви бачите юридичну реалізацію в Україні? Тобто, чи буде це якесь запрошення для цього миротворчого контингенту? And also question to European leaders. Could you explain specifically what would be a contribution from each of your country? Can we name a number of troops and mandate they will have? And to the American side, if I may, what does it mean being a backstop in these security guarantees? And when are you going to present them to President Trump and to the Russian side? Is there any specific date for meeting? Thank you.
Дякую за запитання. Передусім, я вважаю, що гарантії коаліції охочих повинні працювати разом з гарантіями Сполучених Штатів Америки. І саме так буде. Ми працюємо над тим, щоб це були юридично зобов'язуючі гарантії. Що стосується американської сторони, наші двосторонні гарантії безпеки будуть підтримані Конгресом. Дай Бог, щоб ми дійшли до цього моменту. Ми на це розраховуємо, документи в принципі готові, про деталі поки що говорити не можу. Що стосується декларації, це перший крок, який ми підписали, він дуже важливий, він відкриває сам процес, і ці юридично також ці документи будуть юридично зобов'язуючі. Більшості країн із коаліції охочих потрібна підтримка їх парламентів. Тому після декларації, після цього процесу, країни йдуть в парламенти. Також розраховуємо на цю підтримку.
So with regards to the security guarantees, there was extensive conversations about that with President Zelenskyy and President Trump at Mar-a-Lago in December. And I think that they really resolved most, if not all, of the issues that are outstanding on that. These have been really designed over the last really month in consultation with the Ukrainians, with the Europeans. I will say I think today was a very, very big milestone, and I thank President Macron for assembling this and for all of the work that everyone here has done behind the scenes to bring this together. This does not mean that we will make peace, but peace would not be possible without the progress that was made here today, meaning that if Ukraine is going to make a final deal, they have to know that after a deal, they are secure, they have obviously a robust deterrence, and there's real backstops to make sure that this will not happen again. One of the reasons why President Trump is comfortable with where the security guarantees are headed towards is because based on his assessments and his conversations with President Putin is that if we can make the right deal, it would mean a deal where both sides look to de-escalate, that there's a real monitoring mechanism, real ability if there ever is a violation to have deconfliction and hopefully de-escalation. And obviously you create a robust deterrence, peace through strength, where it's unlikely that somebody will ever go and start this again. So this is a really important building block towards an eventual peace deal, and I think that it's a big, big milestone that was reached today between the Europeans with the Coalition of the Willing, and I really want to just thank the DoD and the whole amazing team in the U.S. Obviously, you saw last week the incredible capability of the U.S. military, and that's just a small piece of what they're capable of doing. And so they've been really thinking about this, and they believe that a real peace here is possible, and there are ways to stand behind it.
James Mates, ITV News from London. Mr. Starmer, Prime Minister, today's commitments by the United States are already being called a game changer, and I know there's a reluctance to talk about Greenland today, but what value do these commitments have on the very day that at the highest levels of government in Washington they are talking about seizing the sovereign territory of a fellow NATO member? Mr. Witkoff or Mr. Kushner, if I may ask you, the commitments made today, does President Trump commit to coming to the aid of any European forces deployed in Ukraine were they to come into conflict with Russian forces? Will President Trump have their back? And President Zelenskyy, if I may ask you, is this enough? You said before today you were 90% of the way towards a peace agreement. How close are you now?
Well, let me start. On the question of Greenland, I've been very clear as to what my position and the position of the UK government is, both in statements I made myself yesterday and in the statement that was put out earlier today. I've been equally clear that the relationship between the UK and the US is one of our closest relationships, particularly on issues on defence, security and intelligence. And we work with the US 24/7 on those issues. So far as today is concerned, the Coalition of the Willing was set up just under a year ago now, with the aim to bring about just and lasting peace, and we knew that that would require security guarantees. We worked on military plans, which were prepared over the early months of the year. To a point of several months ago, we were able to set them out with clarity. Today, we've made real progress on the political commitment, declarations, and commitments that have been made today. The biggest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in terms of the number of leaders here, and the first meeting of the Coalition where we've been sat together with our American colleagues around the same table, hammering out these issues. So this is the political declaration that goes with it. And we've made some real progress on those security guarantees. They're set out in the documents we've issued, but they include on issues such as working with the US on ceasefire monitoring, on binding commitments to support Ukraine, and on the operations headquarters here in Paris. And as Jared said a moment ago, and I thank Steve and Jared for all the work they've done in recent weeks, particularly on the security guarantees, and for being here today at our meeting. But peace is only possible because of the progress that we're making in these meetings of the Coalition of the Willing and that we've made here today. And I'm really pleased that nearly a year after we begun this work with the Coalition of the Willing, that we've got this far now with security guarantees. Of course, nobody is saying that is job done. Of course, there's more work always to be done, but we've made some real progress today, and that is a good thing for Ukraine. It's a good thing for Europe. It's a good thing for the United Kingdom because, of course, this is about our security, our defence, our freedoms, and the impact that it's already had over 4 long years on Ukraine, on Europe, and back in the United Kingdom.
The President strongly stands behind security protocols. Those security protocols are meant to, A, deter any attacks, any further attacks in Ukraine, and B, if there are any attacks, they're meant to defend, and they will do both. They are as strong as anyone has ever seen. Everyone on this panel, on this stage up here, has acknowledged that, as has almost all of the countries that sat at the table with us today. The President does not back down from his commitments. He is strong for the country of Ukraine and for a peace deal, and we will be there for the Ukrainians in helping them to get to that final peace, and we're confident we will get there. You want to say something, Jared? Perfect.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, we have declaration, and I think this is a huge step forward, because 1 year ago we couldn't even think about it, and now we have this step. Yes, of course, not enough, not still enough. We will have document which will be supported, I hope, I'm sure, between us, will be supported by European parliaments, and that will be enough. Then we have really very good dialogue with American side, thanks again, Steve and Jared. So we really have good steps forward. Yes, 90%, but we are each day a little bit closer. It's still not enough to have a peace, because enough when the war will finish, will end in Ukraine, we still have losses. So it's still not enough. Thank you very much.
Bonsoir, guten Abend, Bundeskanzler Merz, Michaela Wiegel, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Hier ist von vielen wichtigen Etappen die Rede. Eine wichtige Etappe ist vielleicht auch, dass Deutschland bereit ist, militärisch sich an der Koalition der Willigen zu beteiligen. Herr Bundeskanzler, reicht es, im benachbarten NATO-Gebiet Soldaten zu stationieren? Können Sie etwas mehr sagen, auch was die Erwartungen, die an Sie herangetragen worden sind? Sie haben es schon erwähnt, Deutschland ist der wichtigste Unterstützer. Müssen wir militärisch uns stärker beteiligen?
We should up our military contribution. Thank you, Ms. Wiegel, for that question. Yes, we discussed that at length amongst us today. I said about the government that, of course, we're willing to participate in the security guarantee. Exactly how At the moment, that's an open issue because the whole package as a security guarantee has not yet been fully addressed. We have some very specific proposals available. If Germany is going to be in, that will mean there has to be a decision by the German government, followed by confirmation from the Parliament. So I will make proposals to the government and the Parliament, perhaps once we have a ceasefire, and when in the coalition of the willing we have a consensus view on how we should proceed. We're moving in that direction, but I said in discussions today that it can be the right thing to do both things, that's to say, to place troops in Ukraine, but that means strengthening Ukrainian troops first and foremost, but also in a neighboring state, perhaps place further troops that would be available for intervention should there be a fresh Russian aggression. I'm saying if, it's all on the conditional because the total package has not been negotiated, but the basic premise for all this is a ceasefire agreement with Russia, and that then has to be secured with the appropriate military support to Ukraine. I want to stress once again, it's not just militarily supporting Ukraine, talking about military support for peace and freedom in Europe, and that is why we are also committing to that. It's not just about the territorial integrity of Ukraine, it's about the lasting maintenance of the political freedom and peace that we have in Europe. We've always protected that, and deterrence has been the case of the last 70 years, and I imagine that will be the case over decades going forward as well. Thank you.
Cette conférence de presse est maintenant terminée.
That's the end of the press conference. Thank you all very much and good night. And Happy New Year once again to you all.